Hi everybody and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name's Lysha and I'm the owner of Lysha Be Creative. In today's tutorial, we are using this 30-ounce Grippy from Hog Tumblers, and we are going to be doing this sort of vinyl and rhinestone style design. So of course, everything I use in today's video will be listed and linked down in the description box down below, as well as any discount codes that I have for you. So let's go ahead and jump right into today's tutorial. So as I mentioned in my introduction, we are going to be using the 30-ounce Grippy from Hog Tumbler. So this is sort of like Hog Tumbler's, Manly or Stanley dupe, I guess we'll call it. And so these are a little bit different than traditional Stanleys for sure. It has like this rubber stopper that you use on the lid, and it also comes with like a rubber stopper on the bottom as well, which I thought was really cool and a nice way to like prevent scuffing and things from the bottom of cups. So we're going to go ahead and remove the handle off of this so that of course we can do all the epoxying and all the vinyl work and all that good stuff. So it does come with instructions onto how to remove this handle. So I'm using both a flathead screwdriver and a Phillips screwdriver to get this handle off. So the first thing you have to do is sort of pry that bottom section off, and then the rest of this sort of inner portion of the handle will come out. And at that point, you'll be able to see the screw that is part of the handle. And then just using that Phillips head screwdriver, you'll be able to unscrew this and get this handle completely removed and off of the cup. So once I've gotten it removed from the cup, really simply and easy, I just put the handle back in the box so I don't lose it or any of the pieces. And then we're gonna go ahead and do our regular sanding routine for prepping our tumbler. So I'm using just a 60 or 80 grit sanding block here and scuffing up the surface here to make sure that we get a nice stainless steel kind of scuffed up surface that we're ready for paint. Then we'll go ahead and clean this off, of course, with some 91% rubbing alcohol and a paper towel to clean off any of that sanding debris. That way we can go into spray painting this. So I am going to spray paint this with a flat black spray paint. That's just the color of choice because it's going to match really well the vinyl that we're going to be pairing with this. I decided though that for this cup that I want to tape off the bottom and leave stainless steel exposed. At this point, when I had started the cup, I thought that I would just put that little rubber stopper on the bottom, but I end up doing a glitter butt, which I'll show you at the end of this tutorial. But it's a great opportunity if you do grab these up that it does come with that stopper. So it might be an opportunity to leave an exposed stainless steel bottom, which of course would be a little bit helpful for maybe some of those more heavy-handed people who like kind of slam their cups down. That's usually why I would leave a stainless steel bottom exposed. It doesn't necessarily protect the epoxy necessarily from like cracking or breaking if somebody drops it. But if you do have people that are rather heavy-handed, it definitely is something to think about for those customers and putting that rubber stopper on the bottom. So we're going to be using this vinyl that is from Vinyl Gallery. I will list this vinyl and the website down in the description box as well as a discount code so you guys can save. And so we're going to be applying this vinyl directly to the top half of the cup. What I do really like about these Grippy tumblers is that they are straight on the top portion of the cup. The bottom portion is a taper, but the top does make it really ideal for being able to do any of your normal vinyl wrap work without having to worry about fighting with the taper. So I do really love that because then I don't really have to struggle with potentially trying to figure out how to do this on sort of a tapered style tumbler, which can be a little bit more difficult, of course, than a straight-sided cup. So of course, we're going to apply this vinyl just like we would any other vinyl wrap. I am starting right where that handle goes. That way I can try and sort of hide that seam under where the handle will then be placed back onto the cup. I'm using my big squeege to really help me get this vinyl on and placed straight and evenly and really prevent minimal, sort of bubbles or wrinkles or anything that might happen when you're applying the vinyl. As I get to the back side of the cup, now we're just sort of gonna kind of work with this vinyl and stretch and pull it to make sure that it can go around this handled area. So of course, kind of like the bottom third of this top half of the cup will go on really smooth, but we do have to work around where this little section of the handle is going to be placed back on the cup. And so I'm just gonna use scissors to help me kind of trim out or trim around that section. That way I can still have it vinyl wrapped, but I won't have to worry about, of course, trying to get that vinyl up and over that section because we're just going to cut that little excess off. That way we do have that hole and that section exposed to replace our handle when it's time to do so. So now with that sort of section all trimmed off, we're going to go ahead and trim up the rest of the vinyl just as we would. So just finding the seam of where the two vinyl sections meet, removing that section on both the bottom portion of the handle, the hole for the handle, and the top portion for the handle as well. And then I'm just going to take my craft knife and kind of just carve around where the shape of the handle is and just remove this little excess piece of vinyl as well. So now with that kind of all wrapped, which is perfect, it really went on really easily and really smoothly. This is definitely much easier than, applying vinyl to a handled mug, that already comes with the handle sort of applied to the cup that you can't remove. I do like the opportunity to remove this because it does make doing something like a vinyl wrap much easier to be able to do so. So of course, I'm just going to trim off the remainder excess vinyl around the top rim there. And then our vinyl is already applied and ready to go. The final thing I'm going to do though, before we get this on the turner for our first coats of epoxy, is I'm going to add the washi tape now. So because I haven't added glitter or anything that is going to prevent my washi tape from sticking, I'm going to go ahead and add that line of washi tape that's going to separate sort of my vinyl section from my rhinestone section right now. That way I don't have to worry about remembering to do it before I go into my final coats of epoxy. So once I've gotten that applied, we're going to put this on the turner for a coat of epoxy. And I'm going to go ahead and go right into applying what will technically be our final coats of epoxy. So because we're not doing any glittering, we're not doing any sort of anything that would need me to add multiple layers of epoxy, this cup really only needs a good 2 decent coats of epoxy in order to really be set and done. Now, certainly you could do more if you choose to. I just didn't really feel like it needed a whole lot of epoxy. It's already a pretty smooth surface, and I was really able to get a very smooth, glossy finish after the 2 coats of epoxy. Now, because I am doing technically my 2 final coats of epoxy right now, I am going to make sure that I'm using my Artist Cure formula epoxy versus using my Fast Set, because of course I do prefer to use those for my final coats of epoxy. And we're going to be using, of course, Flynn Sisters Artist Cure epoxy. But in my first layer, I am going to add a little bit of Diamond Magic to my epoxy to give this cup a little bit of sparkle. So because we're not adding any actual glitter to the bottom portion or any part of the cup, I figured a little bit of sparkle with some very fine Diamond Magic is really going to help to sparkle this up a little bit and really add to that shine and shimmer that we're going to get with the rhinestones we're going to add on the bottom. So before I'm ready to epoxy this, I do want to make sure that my cup is even and that it is level on my turner. So I always do this right before I'm going to add my coats of epoxy because I want to make sure that this is completely level and is not going to cause like a muffin top or a really rounded bottom. That is typically what will happen when your cup is not level on your turner. So of course you want to make sure your actual tabletop is level to start before you're going into measuring and making sure that your actual turner or your cup is level on your turner. But because, I've been using the same turner system for forever, I know that my table is set in stone. I just always have to make sure though that my turner is level with my cup on it. So I'm going to go ahead and apply this 30 mLs of epoxy to the cup. I think I ended up using 20 out of the 30. I didn't need the full 30, otherwise it was going to be a little bit too thick and probably goopy. So I just stopped at the 20 mLs, but I'm going to add a nice layer of this epoxy here, making sure that I'm coating absolutely everything and taking my time by stopping my turner to go around that handled area. Now I don't want to cover that handled area with epoxy sort of over top of that, but I do want to make sure I get all of the vinyl that's surrounding that handled area. That way we get a really sealed cup in the end before we do go back to apply that handle back to the tumbler. So once I've gotten this applied, of course, we're going to torch that and make sure that there is absolutely no bubbles on this whatsoever. And then finally, because our bottom is still taped off, I want to remove this. So you certainly could wait, 20 to 30 minutes before removing your tape. I'm just someone who never remembers to come back. Even when I do set an alarm, I forget. So I always end up removing my tape right after I am done torching my cup to make sure that I don't forget about this piece of tape and then have a heck of a time trying to get it off later. So this is what it looks like in all that sparkle and shimmer that Diamond Magic gives to that coat of epoxy. We'll let this sit and cure for about 24 hours before I put on my second coat. Normally I would do like a flood coat, but because I'm only doing 2 coats of epoxy, I want to let this fully cure before I do the final coat, because I do need to get my sanding in since we won't have multiple layers. So I'm taking a 60 grit sanding block and I'm going around the top rim there, making sure to expose that fine line of stainless steel around the rim. That way our final coat of epoxy does have something to adhere to. So of course I'm going to get this all sort of sanded around the rim, get that stainless steel exposed, and then sort of brush that off and then clean it with some 91% rubbing alcohol and a paper towel. I just wanted to make sure I had a nice rim around that edge before I clean this off. We are going to go back though and take our electrical tape and re-tape the bottom off here, because we want to make sure, of course, that we're keeping that bottom stainless steel. So I don't want any epoxy on that bottom section. So taping this off again so we can go ahead and do our final coat of epoxy here. So same process here, except for this time I will not be adding any of the additive Diamond Magic to my epoxy. We're just going to do another 30 ml coat of the Flynn Sisters Artist Cure epoxy all over this cup. So once I've gotten my epoxy applied to the cup, of course, I will torch this, make sure there's no bubbles, and then of course remove that bottom tape section. So this is what it looks like with the 2 coats of epoxy on it. Everything is looking fantastic and looking gorgeous. So we're gonna go ahead and get into applying our rhinestones. So for rhinestones today, you certainly could use any rhinestone that you wanted to, but I really wanted to use these transparent mermaid tears. So we're going to be using transparent mermaid tears from Flynn Sisters Supply Shop to put around the bottom portion of this cup. So I'm starting off by prepping that bottom section where all the rhinestones are going to do by doing a light sanding of just a 100 grit sanding block just to scuff up that surface. We want to scuff that epoxy a little bit and give our stones and our glue something to really stick to and adhere to. Same process you would do if you were starting on a stainless steel base, right? Give that sort of cup something for the glue to stick to and better adhere your rhinestones to. So to start this, I always start with my 2 lines. So although we are doing a scatter method, I still like to start with doing the bottom or top line of the cup where the rhinestones are going to be filled in between to really get those kind of set in stone and cured as far as the glue goes before I try to add all of the stones in the center section. So I'm just going to go around this bottom portion of the cup and just add that row of mermaid tears along the bottom, making sure that everything is even and it doesn't go too far down the bottom of the cup. That way we still have that stainless steel portion exposed. So I'm just putting those mermaid tears right around the bottom of where the paint and glitter and epoxy stop. So once I've gotten my 2 lines set, I'm going to let those cure for a few hours. Then I'll come back and start to fill in the middle section here. And so I did do about 2/3 of this with the scatter method using the mermaid tears. And at this point, I'm towards the last third portion of the cup. And so I want to go ahead and add my little logo tag to the back portion of this. And so I'm going to show you how I apply these. And I'm just going to use the same exact stone glue that I would use for my rhinestones to be able to apply this little logo tag. So I got my logo tag from Mizzy Doodles Creation, so I will list her website down in the description box. She has lots of different sort of styles and designs that you can grab for these. And if you're someone who rhinestones, I definitely think these are quick and easy and great to have for all of your rhinestone projects. So now just a few speed sessions of me applying the mermaid tear rhinestones. So I didn't mention, and I am going to do a more in-depth tutorial about the glue that I've been using, but this is called Gem Tack glue. You can usually find it at like Michael's and Hobby Lobby. This is a glue though that applies white and then dries clear. So your stones will almost look like they're cloudy after you've applied them before the glue kind of dries, and then everything sort of, you know, sparkles up and shines up after the glue has finally kind of dried. It does, though, when you wash your stones, the glue does turn back white. Don't be alarmed if that does happen if you're trying out this glue. because it is something that happens, and once it fully dries, then you are really good to go. So the bottom portion of this cup took me probably about probably a few hours, honestly, to get done. Mermaid Tears has a lot of very tiny stones because there's those rounded stones versus like the different facets you'd find on a traditional glass rhinestone. So those do take me a little bit longer to get placed than typical glass rhinestones, but I love the look of this. It does give more of a blue hue, which I thought I wasn't going to love against the red and pink, but honestly, I'm kind of loving how this is turning out. So just back to apply the handle back to the cup, really easy peasy to get done. You just screw it back onto the cup and then put that little section that sort of covers that right over top and just snap the bottom, and then it's literally back and adhere. It's also got a really good grip. I was a little worried that I would have some issues with like the epoxy being a little bit too thick around it, but even with the 2 coats of epoxy doing, 20 to 30 mLs in both coats, it really didn't give me any issues to be able to go back and reattach this handle later. So to finish things off here, we are going to add, of course, a little glitter butt to this because I can't just have that exposed stainless steel and not have anything to sparkle on this cup. So I've gone ahead and mixed up about 10 mLs of the Fast Set from Flint Sister Supply Shop, and I've added a little bit of red gem from my Asia Creations to the cup here just to add a little bit of red sparkle to sort of match those roses and florals that were in the vinyl. I'm only going to apply about 5 mLs into the divot and bottom portion of this cup. That was kind of all that would fit here. Too much, of course, is going to create more of a dome in that section, and you don't want that because then your cup will not lay flat. So I always err on the caution of less is more. I'd rather add less than I need and go back with a little bit more later if I find that it doesn't fill up the entire inner circle, then put too much and try and have to sort of dig out or scoop out any of the excess epoxy. So just using my stir stick, I'm going to go around that entire circled area, make sure that the epoxy is right up to the edges of that inner circle, and then we're going to go ahead and torch this, remove all those bubbles, and let it sit for about 2 to 3 hours to fully cure and be dry to the touch. So after that, I just let this sit, and then that was it. This cup is finished, and it really is a quick and easy project, even with the rhinestoning process that you really could get done within a couple days, and I'm really in love with how this one turned out. So certainly, if you did enjoy today's video, as always, please give this video a huge thumbs up and subscribe to my channel, and you guys know that I will see you again in the next one. Bye!